Have you reached a point in your weight loss journey where the scale absolutely refuses to budge? This can be so frustrating, but don't stress out. It's incredibly common. In this video, I'm going to discuss 4 different ways to get you over this hump so you can finally reach those weight loss goals. The first thing you want to do is take an objective measurement of your daily intake. We are notoriously terrible at estimating how many calories we take in per day. And I'm not suggesting you should calorie count, because please don't calorie count. That is awful. But what I'm suggesting is to merely maybe have a food journal, track your diet for a little while, see if there's something sneaking in there that otherwise shouldn't be, or see if you are taking in more than you otherwise wouldn't have. I typically use food journals with my clients when they tend to get off track a little bit, or if several weeks go by and we don't notice any weight loss. So these can be incredibly telling. There are so many resources nowadays for different kinds of food journaling. Or if you want to do it the old-fashioned way, just jot it down on paper. Or if you're more of a photographer, take pictures of your food and then keep track of it that way. There are so many different ways to do this. The point is just to get an actual measurement of what you're eating on a day-to-day basis. And you don't have to do this for long, maybe a few days to a week, depending on, whether or not you determine the culprit of what's going on and whether it's easily fixable. So like I mentioned, you want to watch out for those higher calorie foods. So as long as you are staying within those whole food plant-based options, you should be totally fine. But as people go along their journey, they tend to get a little cocky and they start to incorporate more and more items than they otherwise wouldn't have when they were losing weight, because they think that momentum is going to continue. And it's okay to experiment. It's important to experiment from time to time to see which of those foods that we really enjoy that we can incorporate back into our diet, and maybe they won't cause the weight gain that we were trying to get rid of in the first place. It's all about trial and error. And there's not going to be one specific solution for every person. Everybody is very individualized when it comes to their metabolism and their genetics and their biology. So it's important to note whether your foods have become more processed. Condiments tend to be a very likely culprit in this area. Otherwise, things like pastas, make sure those are absolutely 100% whole grain. If you don't put that 100% whole grain on top of the whole grain, only portions of those ingredients are whole grain. So there are so many sly marketing techniques that can get you off track. If you stick with whole foods, you can't go wrong. That's why I just recommend legumes, fruits, veggies, whole grains. You literally cannot mess that up. But in our modern society, we love to incorporate all these different inventions and all these different food manufacturing and processing abilities that we didn't have in the future. And that's totally okay if you're okay with the weight gain. I also mentioned making sure you're checking portion sizes. This isn't something that you have to be highly vigilant about if you're eating whole plant foods. But if you are eating just potatoes or just a bunch of oatmeal, it's going to impact your waistline. So what I always recommend is 1.5 cups of cooked, not pre-cooked, but cooked whole grains per day. Maximum. Now, this is not something that you absolutely have to eat. It's just something that's important for your microbiome, and it has a number of B vitamins and other wonderful minerals and vitamins that will help you maintain all of your body's wonderful functions. But at the same time, you can still get those nutrients from other foods. When it comes to fruits and veggies, you really don't have to worry about portion sizes, but the legumes and the higher calorie whole grains tend to be more of an issue in this area. Legumes, I always recommend getting at least a cup, if not a cup and a half a day. They're so good for you. Yes, they're high in calories, but only for people who aren't used to eating them. I recently came across a study that showed that people who tend to eat beans on a regular basis only absorb about 20 to 30% of the total calories. But people who do not eat beans on a regular basis can absorb up to 100% of those calories. So the microbiome is a really fascinating area of study right now. I highly encourage you to research this topic more on your own. I also mentioned some of those other culprits can be things like the SOS-containing foods, some of those more highly processed options that we tend to gravitate towards after we get comfortable in a situation with our weight loss. So things like tofu or even hummus, things that are seemingly innocuous, but when you actually read the ingredients, you can find that there is a ton of fat or a lot of oil that's slipped into things like hummus or other condiments, or salt and sugar in seemingly healthful foods like salsas and pico de gallo and mustard and canned goods. These can stimulate our appetite in a very unnatural way and keep us taking in calories regardless of the fact that we're not even hungry. So just be wary of any processed items. I can't say enough good things about whole, natural plant foods. And finally, when you are assessing your intake, make sure you're getting enough water. Water is so important for weight loss, but a number of other things. So just try to be cognizant. If you're thirsty, drink some water. And always start your day with a huge, huge, huge cup of water, if not 3 or 5, depending on your activity level, obviously. For those of you who like to work out in the morning, I highly suggest at least 3 cups of water in the morning prior to your workout. If you're finding value in this video, make sure you give it a like. I'd really appreciate it. The second area that is worth assessment is the other pillars of health, things like getting enough rest. Rest is so important for so many things, but obviously for weight loss. You don't want to go through your day groggy, making terrible judgments on what foods you're eating. It's not going to be a helpful situation. Another highly overlooked area of health is stress management. We totally take our self-care for granted. And I know we are super busy and we have a million things going on with work and kids and husbands and what have you. But if you don't put yourself first, your weight will tell you. It is a sure sign that you need to take a step back and reassess your priorities. Another likely overlooked area of health would be social connections. I recently learned watching the Andrew Huberman podcast. I don't know if you guys are into that. He's a neuroscientist and an ophthalmologist at Berkeley. I think it's Berkeley. But he explained that there are studies that show that if we don't get a certain amount of social connection, we will actually yearn for that social connection in our dopamine responses. So if your body is trying to tell you that you need something, that you're lacking something, that you should be searching outside yourself for something, that very well could be social connectivity. But if you misinterpret these signals and take them as hunger instead, or any other kind of, oh, I should probably go eat something now, it's going to impact your weight in a negative way. So take some time out and make sure you're spending enough time with friends and loved ones. They are so good for our health and it's free. And yes, obviously the last pillar will definitely be exercise. Making sure you get regular physical activity is so crucial for weight loss, not the reason that you think it probably is. It's not so effective at weight loss in and of itself, but it's more effective in making sure everything else is properly calibrated. So your mental well-being, your sleep, your ability to care for yourself, these are all going to be, your mood, these are all going to be managed by how much regular activity you get in a given day. They say that anywhere over 6 hours of sitting per day is going to cause detrimental long-term health effects. So think of exercise as not something you have to gruel over in the gym and just sweat yourself to death. Think of it as something enjoyable. You can go do something pleasurable like dancing or hiking or a walk in the park. It doesn't have to be this dreaded, uncomfortable experience. And I can't say enough things about strength training. Make sure you're getting at least some light weekly strength training in regularly. This will help to maintain all of those weight loss efforts, but also you want to keep that muscle mass on your body while you continue to lose fat in order to get your metabolism in a proper spot to maintain that weight loss. The third thing you can do is just remember that weight loss takes time. Your body is adjusting and adapting to all these new behaviors and trying to get used to mobilizing fat storages and utilizing your mitochondria more efficiently. There are so many things going on. You can't anticipate a smooth road every time. So yes, it is very frustrating to put out the same amount of effort and utilize the same behaviors, but yield a different result. But I assure you, if you trust in the process and just maintain the same behaviors that got you the initial weight loss, you will inevitably catch up to your efforts. This may take up to 4 to 6 weeks, so don't get too discouraged too quickly. A lot of people will revert to old behaviors if they feel that their efforts are not being effective. Don't fall into this trap. Keep going. It's all about the process. You're building lifelong habits, and it's not all about weight loss. These are healthful habits. Yes, having a lean body weight is really important for health, but it's also important for longevity and happiness and everything else that goes into a high quality of life. And lastly, for number 4, if you have legitimately reached a plateau in your weight loss, you may just require less calories as a lighter person. It's sad but true. I know we all love to eat and we all love to get as many calories as we can while we still get away with our weight loss. But the truth is, when we become lighter and lighter, your body is going to require less and less calories. So it's important to recalibrate and adjust those calories as you go. And you'll find your body will tell you. You'll find that you're not as hungry and your appetite isn't as out of control as it probably once was. And you're able to get by on smaller portions and less food throughout a given day. If you're stuck in a rut like I often get into and you're having the same meal day after day after day for each, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or if you're having the same oatmeal for breakfast every day and the same salad for lunch every day and the same soup for dinner every day, maybe you want to alter these a little bit and experiment with some smaller portion sizes. Or maybe you want to try different meals altogether. Don't get too discouraged with this process because it truly is all about experimentation. There's no one answer for everybody, and there's no set amount of calories that I can suggest for every person. Sometimes we just need to be our own scientists and do our own research and determine what works for our particular biology. If you reassess and try each of these strategies and you're still finding difficulties getting over this plateau, make sure you reach out to me. I thoroughly enjoy helping people one-on-one when it comes to reaching their health and weight loss goals. You can find a link for a free consultation in the description box below if you're interested in working together. All right, guys, I'll see you in the next one.